Hello, I'm Joyce Woodworth. Welcome to the Spirit of the Heartland. Today we're at Jan Hiram's home in Pickwick Valley. She's a master gardener from Winona, and she is going to give us some advice on how best to plant some garden pots. So I brought several pots here. I brought a plastic one and a couple clay pots. Hopefully she'll give me some advice on how to make these pots beautiful. Let's go see Jan. Hi, Jan.
Hi, welcome, Joyce.
Well, thanks. Hey, I really need some help planting these pots. Can you do it?
I sure can give you some help and a little bit of advice, too. So come on in.
Oh, thanks.
Let's set them right up here.
All right. Well, Jan, I brought 3 pots, and I want to know which would be the best to pot in.
Well, you have 3. This is a glazed clay, and this nice glaze on the outside will help retain moisture in it. The plastic will totally help hold the moisture in, and this clay pot is lovely. It's got a nice little patina to it, but it's going to take the moisture away from the soil and evaporate out, and you'll be trying to keep this thing watered 10 times a day. So I would recommend that if you love this pot and want to do it, that we'd put the plastic liner in it.
Okay.
That way it will help seal the moisture to the planting. We can plant directly in this, but you can feel how hot it is. It really absorbs a lot of heat.
Yes,
And I think even through this beautiful glaze, so I'd recommend that we put this inside and plant in this pot, and then it's good to go. You've got a beautiful pot and the moisture that you're going to need.
Okay. And I see, I might point out too that this does have holes for water to come through, and that's a good idea, isn't it?
It's a must, because you'll just drown those plants if you don't have any drainage holes. And a lot of beautiful pots like this don't have drainage holes, and some people like to pot in it, and you have to then use a liner or drill holes. So we do have that good drainage, so that's good to go. Now, have you planted in this one before?
Yes,
Okay, so what we want to do is make sure that this is going to be a good environment for the planting. So I'm just going to brush a little of the dirt out, and I'm going to sanitize it using a solution of water and bleach.
Okay.
So let's, I'm going to set this one out of the way.
Oh, it's a heavy one.
Okay, we're not going to be using that.
Yeah, this is still dirty from last year.
That's good. Hey, now you're going to help with this planting.
Okay.
I think you need some gloves. How would these work for you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, lovely. Match
Great.
my outfit. Great.
They match the flowers. Beautiful.
Oh, they sure do.
All right.
And what do you sanitize with?
Well, it's 10 parts water to 1 part household bleach. And so I have this mixed up already. And I can do this because I have rubber gloves on. And I'm just going to wipe it down good.
Okay. We have little ribbons on your spades. What's this for?
I do. You know, we do, as a master gardeners, we do a lot of community service projects. And so if I take that and I'm working with other people, a lot of people have the same kind of tools. So I put little pink ribbons on mine just so I can pick mine
idea.
up. Thank you. So
I can tell you're a
good.
teacher. Teachers do things like that.
Thank you. Wow, great plants, good colors. I like the contrast. You have high, medium, low. You've got a very deep tone, light brights, and then that white is really going to be great. Did you have a favorite, the snapdragons or the geraniums for the center?
Let's start with the snapdragons. I love the colors of these snapdragons. I think it's called a rocket red, and they really are a dark red, aren't they?
It really is gorgeous.
It's kind of like a sky rocket coming out of the sky.
Yeah. These little white things, that's great.
All right. These are called Nurembergia.
Great.
I hope that
Super.
I said that right.
I bet you did.
Okay.
And I like this because you're going to get the texture of this fine leaf against these deeper, bolder leaves. And we have a larger flower like this. If we look at the face of that petunia, it's very big, and then we have these smaller, more delicate little white flowers. So this is great.
And this also is kind of a cascading flower, kind of
we really
falls
want that
over.
to happen, and so we're gonna encourage it to come down a little bit. So I think we're ready to plant.
Is that kind of a theme that you generally go high, medium, and low? Is that kind of a theme for potting plants
I think
in
that's
the pot?
great, especially if you have a circular pot like this, and you're going to see it from all sides. You want it to be high, medium, and then lower, so no matter where you are. Now, if you're doing an elongated flower box, you'd probably want tall in the back, medium, and cascading in the front and sides. So it just depends upon the shape of the pot and where you're going to put it. Now, this has good drainage holes in it. And I'd like to put something in here. You can put rocks or you can use broken pots. I have an old pot and I have some pot pieces in here. Cover the bottom with this.
Okay.
And the reason for this is the roots will stop on top of the shards and then the moisture will drain out. You never want the roots sitting in water. And that isn't quite enough. So you just take any handy tool. This happens to be a rock from the garden. There goes the part. Okay, now we're cooking. All right.
Great. You want to just dump them right in there?
Sounds great. And you've got those pieces. That'll be good.
Okay, so we
And
got
one
about
more.
that many.
Now what we're going to do is put in some potting soil. Now you wouldn't just go out and dig. We're out on the farm here, and we wouldn't just go and dig that soil because we want something that's going to retain moisture, and that's in potting soil, and we want something to drain well. So if you use a potting mix like we have here, this happens to be one that is exclusively for potting.
Okay.
And it does have the moisture control particles in it. Now, why don't you just feel that? And
Oh, yeah. Feels
it's
very moist.
Very moist. It's fluffy. And these little white particles are actually going to absorb moisture and hold it to the roots longer. Okay, now what I'm going to do is scoop this up, and we're going to load this up pretty well. Now, if you have potting soil from last year's project, you can use that. I would recommend that you put it out in the sun and let it really dry and bake in the sun to just kind of give it a sterilizing. But then you'd want to add some fresh compost to it, or what I do is I use 1/3 of the old, 1/3 of compost, and 1/3 new potting soil. Let's just try taking some of the snapdragons. So we're going to plant in the center and work our way out.
Okay. Okay, well, I pulled it out of the pot, but it really seems to be dry from the store.
It's very dry, and that's a critical thing that we have to really soak this down when we water it. Another thing, this is a very tall plant, and it's rather root bound. If you look closely, you can see that the roots have really taken the shape of the pot. And what we want to do is, usually you can just wiggle this loose with your fingers. Sometimes you can even take a knife. But we want to loosen those roots and let them have their freedom because they need to take root. Now, this is actually meant to break apart like this, and we'll do that. We could definitely just leave these two together because we're going to be planting them fairly close. We don't want to sink these leaves into the soil. I'm just going to, with my finger, just pull some of these leaves off. And let's put your two right up front.
Okay.
Now, Joyce, I didn't ask you, where do you think this is going to sit?
I think it's going to sit on a deck.
Okay, so it'll be viewed from all sides.
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's go with some of those petunias.
Oh, all right. Oh, I have a variety of colors here, and they all match. They all
Wow,
look beautiful.
that's great.
We should probably get some
Super.
white ones in there. I like the touch of white.
Joyce, when you are doing this at home, if you're going to do another pot, you want to carefully take hold of the stem at the base here. I have my fingers underneath, and I'm pushing up on this to break it out. And if it doesn't seem to come, then I'm going to work my fingers all the way in like this. And I'm going to flip it upside down to support it. Then I can break this apart.
Jan, I have a question. When
Sure.
petunias are growing nice and full, and then some of them are dead, and I understand it's best to pinch the dead ones off, but I'm not sure where to pinch them off.
Well, you know what I do is I just take a hold of the bell, bottom of the bell, and just yank it out.
Okay, so you don't pinch it from the base of the green part.
No, I don't. I just take that
Okay.
because you don't want that to go to seed, because then all the plant is spending all of its energy making seeds, and it's like you just want
Okay.
blooms. And you know what? As I look at this, and let me just spin this to you, it's like, oh my, we need to
Yeah.
bring that up. It's way too low. This soil has all the fertilizer in that you're going to need for a long time.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was so important to put the right potting soil in.
It makes a big difference in the success of those pots.
Well, I certainly loosened up this.
Yes. We are going to water it well.
Okay, look at, now this is just something you just toss away.
I think I'd leave it just in
Okay.
case one of those are going to be working. It's looking good.
Yeah, it is.
Now we could take one more tall one
All right.
here.
Well, here's kind of a really different looking one. It's kind of variegated.
You know, I don't think I'd put that in the mix.
Okay.
I think you've got all the color variation you need. So
All right. Oh, here's a nice, healthy looking one.
It sure is. Nice job on picking these out. We are ready for our lower level.
And what are these called again?
You go for it.
Nurembergia.
There you go.
Or Mont Blanc.
Yes.
Oh.
Now,
These are really dry.
now we're going to kind of put this in at an angle because we want it to come over the edges. And I think over a little growth time, this will drop a little bit. There are some plants that actually do trail way over.
So what other plants do you suggest for putting around the side that would droop over?
Well, you know, there's a vinca vine that comes down and drapes. There are just a wide variety of different kinds of leaves that you can get. I like verbena a lot. It just drapes and it blooms and blooms and it just keeps on blooming. That's one of my favorites. Do we have a little of purple?
Oh, yes, we have some purple.
You know, I think what we'll do
Mix it
then,
with a purple. Good idea.
I think we'll maybe spread these white out.
Okay.
Just because we have that variety. We don't have to have just all white in one spot.
Well, you have a very creative eye, Jan.
Well, thank you. It's fun. Colors are fun, and that's part of gardening.
And we even have a really light lavender
I'll take one
one.
of those right here. Very nice. Okay, we'll take
There,
that
two
apart.
of them.
Whoa, I love that. Isn't that nice?
Oh, yes.
We're going to make sure there's soil all the way around those roots.
Well, how many plants do you generally put in a pot this size? Because won't they fill in soon?
They will. We're loading this up pretty much. These are pretty mature plants.
Oh, I like the colors.
The colors are great. Our table is a little bit leaning, so we're kind of looking at it like this. Now, there are a few holes here, and I think that we could add more of this.
More of this.
That's correct.
Okay.
What do you think?
Oh, I think it's beautiful.
Great, super. Okay, now what we need to do is we want to make sure that none of the roots are exposed.
Okay.
We want to make sure that we carefully pack soil around all of that. Now, we would never fill this all the way to the top. You want some room for the water, because if you have soil all the way to the top, you're going to add it and the soil will start floating away.
So do you think we're finished?
I think we're done. We'll just
I
shake
think
it
so.
loose.
Yeah,
However,
that's
we have a
great.
really, really big job to do right now.
Okay.
And that is we're going to have to really saturate this down because we found some of those plants were very dry. So I'm going to gently pour the water in and let you rotate the pot.
Okay. Now, this is just water. It has no Miracle Grow
Nothing.
or anything in it.
No, we have all of that already in the potting soil.
Okay.
So it has enough, sometimes up to 3 months, which is pretty much our growing season. Now what you're going to do is after it's thoroughly saturated, the water comes out, you know you've watered it enough. And you'll know it's time to water it again when you touch it. The finger test is really the best, but put your finger right in the soil, press down, and if it's a little bit moist, it does not need watering. In this heat, however, most pots like this would have to be watered once a day. But you know what? I'd love to see this in your glazed pot.
Oh, yeah, let's try it. I'll pick this up. You
Okay,
pick up the
I've
plant.
got that.
This is a heavy one.
All right, we'll sink this in. And
Oh,
it'll just
Yes.
jump right in there. And we do see a little bit of the double edging, but that's just that'll cover off in very little time.
Oh, sure.
That
This will
is
cover it right
lovely.
up.
Great pot.
that is pretty. Really
It
pretty.
sure is.
Ooh, look at that. Gorgeous.
Very nice. Yep, and we can just kind of help these hang down a little.
Sure.
That's good.
Jan,
Good job.
thank you. It's great.
Beautiful.
Now, Jan, I'm really curious about the Master Gardeners program. Why would you even want to be a Master Gardener? Because I know you have to give a lot of community service.
Well, it's a great way to give back to the community. It's also, I think, personally, I'm intrigued by what there is to know with plants. I know I like plants, I know I like working with them, but when you go through the core course of Master Gardening, it's a fairly intense, about 8 full days.
What are the best tips that you have found as a Master Gardener?
Well, some of the things I've learned definitely would be pruning of trees. One of the things here, and I could point this out, a tree like this, which we planted, we didn't know that we really should have 1 leader. So had we known that when we planted it, we would have definitely pruned it differently. Also, our pine trees have been in this condition probably for over 30 years, where the lower branches were clipped. It's not a good thing to do with an evergreen tree, because here in Minnesota, the evergreen, which is behind you, it was clipped up, and fortunately we're not having a problem with it, but sometimes the snow gets so heavy and the top boughs put pressure on the next bough, and if you have all of the branches, then it can take all of that pressure gently to the ground. But if you clip it, those bottom are really being pushed, and sometimes they snap off and break and die, and you end up just chopping up your tree. The main purpose of Master Gardening is to teach other people. So it was just fun for you to come here and help you a little bit, and the whole thing is educating people. We love to take questions and help people.
Excellent. Now, I'm hoping that you'll take us on a little tour and show us some of your lovely gardens.
I'd be happy to. That'd be great.
And thank you
Super.
so much for helping us pot.
You're welcome. This is Mother of Thyme, and I like it. It smells great, and it is something that you can actually use.
Oh, so you use this? Oh, yes. It
I
smells
actually
wonderful.
don't use it real often, but it's nice to have, and it does.
very pretty.
It's there, and this moves into a sedum, and this sedum is just kind of growing around the hosta. Now I've created the hostas, and I keep dividing them out, and I'm trying to create here a path so the eye can flow, a nice curved flowing line to it. So we have some more of the cranesbill. This is another variety. It's very tall, and I do have a support there because it flops over in a wind. Now this is a lower cranesbill, and it's called a hardy geranium. And so it comes up, it's really towards the end of its blooming cycle. Now there is a plant here called the spiderwort, and it is not opening because it's so hot. It's actually a plant that I dug out of the bank along the county road, so it's kind of fun to have a free plant every now and then. And if we just move across, I have a lot of irises that are clipped down, and they're soon going to be divided. So that's going to happen this fall. Mixing it with this darker leaf is a lily, so there are different colors of darker reds and some yellow lilies that come in here.
And I see you have some really pretty zinnias in here, and one even has a butterfly. But those are annuals, aren't they?
They are annuals. That's a good spot. And it's just fun to have a little perk of color.
Sure.
I have dianthus of some of the same color tones. I can't quite give up my reds and my oranges, and I still plug them in here, even though this has kind of evolved into a softer purple. Some of the blues. I like magenta. Putting a few annuals in here and there really sparks things up, because when you have a perennial bed, not everything is going to be blooming at one time. This is a sedum, autumn joy. It gets nice and it mounds up, kind of creating this little ball shape. This is an annual that's just kind of an old-fashioned, we call it a buttercup, but I don't really know what its real name is. And there's another form of coreopsis, the plant that stands up so nice and straight. So everything here, now the daisies will, if it's a really strong wind, will flop. And I'll sometimes give them a support because that's a plant from my mother's garden. The sedum is a plant from my mother's garden. There's another sedum, and the irises are from my mother-in-law's garden. So a lot of these plants have a story, and it's fun. It's fun to share that. Now it's interesting because this is all behind the rock wall. It is rock, and I tried to get this creeping phlox to grow within the garden space, and I just couldn't get it to grow. And where does it show up? Within the rocky stuff. So some plants just naturally know what's best for them, and apparently they like that well-drained soil. This whole area was clay, and had I really started from scratch, I should have dug out all that clay and brought in some compost and really make a wonderful flower bed out of it, but I just did piecemeal. So I was digging the clay out pail by pail, and then as I planted each new plant, then I added that compost and to improve the soil structure.
It's very pretty. You have some lovely, lovely flowers in here.
Oh, thank you. And some things are just starting. We can take a walk up around and we can kind of see it from another angle, and I'll show you another garden.
And as we look up, it's so pretty because you have a wonderful hill that goes right up into the trees.
And we've planted that down to hold the water. And so that's crown vetch. The purple is crown vetch. And you see that along the highway sometimes.
Yes.
And the little yellow as we walk up there is bird's foot trefoil. So those are good ground covers, and they're very pretty.
Yes, it makes a really good backdrop for your real more formal garden.
going to call the grandchildren's garden, even though we only have one grandchild. But it's like, we have a grandchild who is a little over a year old, and I thought this will be a perfect garden for her because we have so many textures here. This is just a silver mound, and she'll, I'm sure, love to touch it. Doesn't it feel soft?
Oh my goodness,
That's great.
yes.
And then we have the lamb's ear, and that just has a nice texture. It's almost furry and fuzzy, and it has the shape of the lamb, so I'm sure she'll make up stories to match. And I've planted a few of those annuals, repeating some of those same colors. This is something I really enjoy, and there's several of these plants. This is called a butterfly weed. Some people call it the butterfly bush, and it attracts monarch butterflies.
Oh, I can see a caterpillar on there right now.
Right there, and it's eating. They love to eat the leaves, and I've been looking for a chrysalis, and a chrysalis usually hangs down with protection, but the monarch butterfly will come and lay the eggs on this plant. So when the caterpillars are formed, they're food source. Good to go. This is a sand cherry bush, and the swallow butterfly likes this.
Oh,
and so
nice.
The first time I saw the caterpillar on this, it's not an attractive caterpillar. And it's like, what's eating the bush? I did a little research and looked it up and found out, oh, that's good. That's the swallowtail. These are salvias, and you've noticed that I have these in this garden. I have it in the family garden, and I just love it. I like to repeat it. It's just a great bloomer, and when this is done blooming, I'll just take and cut it all back, and it'll just pop up again, and so it'll bloom again for us. This that I'm leaning into is a penstemon. It's a lovely plant, and it has these great stalks, and as soon as it's done, I'll cut them back also, and we'll have some more plants coming. Tucked in here, I have some frogs, and I have a lizard. This happens to be on a magnet, and it can be moved, and I'm hoping when the grandchildren come to visit, who knows, they'll come and find it, and they may hide it in another spot. It's just something that can be found. I've also found some little butterflies, and I kind of clip them here and there. Oh, here's one right in here. So I put it on a little garden stake, and it's kind of a fun thing. And I've kind of tucked unusual things in the garden that typically aren't there. And I think grandchildren will have fun finding those butterflies and lizards and frogs.
We're finishing up here in Jan's third garden, and this is your walk-through garden, I believe.
It is. We can just walk to the back door and walk through it. It's a fun little garden. This area actually conceals our septic system, so it covers that all up. And I have a sculpture that I made last summer. It's an organic free-flowing, which really repeats the rocks in color and also in the free-form designing. And this is a garden that we had professionally done. And so we had a landscaper come in, design it, and actually install it. And I'm so pleased we did it. We did it to honor my mother and in her memory. And it's just great to have a professional come in, because I would never have thought of putting in these beautiful trees and the height. We have so many different textures and colors with the red crimson barberry. Things are planned out so well. We have a full bloom of the creeping phlox. Again, the everlasting or the hardy geraniums blooming out, and things just are throughout the season blooming, so it's great. The pagoda tree is a smaller tree, and then we have the larger multi-stem birch along with the evergreen in the background, so it's really a fun garden, and we just walk through it, and the dog makes little paths here and there, so it's fun.
And the trees keep it shady, and how nice to plant some trees in a garden.
It is, yes. So it's one of those things, and we have a honeysuckle here that's covering up the telephone box. So some of the things are used to camouflage, and some are just adding a lot of color.
Well, Jan, I want to thank you so much
you're
for
welcome.
everything.
This has been great.
Yeah,
It's
thank you
fun.
for teaching us how to pot some pots.
Oh,
and
you're welcome.
Yeah, it was great.
Good.
It was so
It's fun.
And your gardens are beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much.
And now, if you would like to be in contact with one of the Master Gardeners, you can contact them at the County Extension Office, and their phone number is 457-6440.
That's right.
Yep, and thank you so much for joining us today here in Jan's Garden. Please join me again next week. Till then, enjoy the spirit of the Heartland.